So what have you been up to the last few days? I bet you're ready for a new project. I certainly am. I've got block number 5 from our awesome Peek into Batik quilt along. Let's get started. Hello, 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 my dear friends. I am Rob Appell. Welcome back to Making It Fun from Michael Miller Fabrics. We are going to have a blast today with a super easy block construction. We are once again doing our Peek into Batik, our block of the month, our sew along, featuring today block number 5. Doesn't that look awesome? And of course, we've got the fantastic full-size quilt that has 12 blocks that come all together. And of course, you can follow along month after month, or you can just grab the blocks and go. I've done tutorials on the first 4, and also another little public service announcement just in case it makes it easier than editing it out. I am dog sitting a neighbor's dog, and he barks a lot more than my dog. So we might have a little extra guest background noise, but you know, that's just the fun of recording in a home studio, recording for YouTube, and having a blast, making it fun with fabric and sewing and all of you right here. So if you've never done one of our sew-alongs block of the month style before, on michaelmillerfabrics.com, you can find a link to the blog. On the blog, which we also call Making It Fun, we have the printable instructions for both rotary cutting, or if you have an AccuQuilt system, you can download the instructions using their block system, and the blocks come together perfectly either way, even if you started with the AccuQuilt and moved over to piecing or whatever, and we've done that in a couple of fun videos. So anyways, lots of fun. I am doing patchwork because that's what we do here at Making It Fun, and we're gonna really just dive right in today. And the block construction, if you watched last month's, got a little tripped up inside of it. Block construction is super, super easy. We are actually just going to make 4 of these units exactly, and they come together featuring a couple of smaller parts, right? So we have 4 of these squares. You're going to need their 2.5 inches from the black fabric. These here are 2 7/8 squares of the green and of the gold fabric. I think my fingers just hit those backwards, but I think you'll forgive me. Now, of the 2 7/8 squares, we're going to make one single diagonal cut. So let's just do that together right now. And I'm just going to stack these up to get them as accurate as possible. Take that wonderful little ruler to keep my hands safe and give a nice straight line. And I'm going to rotary cut a single diagonal cut through there so that these 2 have been cut down. Those are the 2 7/8. And so you will actually need 2 of each of those colors made because we're going to need 4, right? And then also we have one of these blue squares, and this was 4 7/8. And let's go ahead and prep that out too. So we're going to go ahead and do one single diagonal cut with this. And now what you actually see on the table right here is enough to make 2 of these center square block units. And so I'm going to put one together now, and then we'll build the whole center out after I have the rest of them done when you're not looking. So we're going to focus on our black square just like this. And then we're going to take one of our gold triangles and we're going to lay it up here like this. This is going to be our first sew and seam, and what I do when I'm lining up triangles and squares, my tip or my trick is to line up the tip here, but then I'm keeping this straight edge across the top and this straight edge across the edge over here. You might notice that these little corners are hanging longer than they're supposed to. That's what we need when we sew together triangles and squares. So if you've never done a patchwork quilt before, you've never used triangles, please note it's just a little benefit, and I'll just walk you through that today as we go along. Now I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to lower my presser foot. I've got an edge guide on my foot today, making life really nice and easy and consistent, which is always important. And I'm just going to go sew all the way through that gold side there. I'm going to return to the ironing board, and right now I want to press into the triangle. So I'm going to hold that triangle up in the air. Just going to press over nice and easy like this. Now I'm going to come back and I'm just going to kind of double check that I'm putting this back in the orientation that my instructions are in. And now I'm going to add in one of the green triangles. And what we're going to do is we're going to find that this green triangle forms a straight line, or the hypotenuse, if you're a geometry fan, of the big square we're going to be building here in a second. So once again, we're going to look for this point up here. We're going to fold those over. And now as I'm doing this, I'm accurately lining up that bottom corner still, really focused on that bottom corner there. And now as I come under the presser foot, I'm going to make sure that kind of the bulk of those corners is up underneath there. Lower that presser foot down with the edge guide, and now we're just going to sew all the way through to that bottom corner. Take a moment, and now we're going to press the green away from the black, or away from the center square, depending on which colors you're using. And then this is just a great habit. We're just going to trim this down right now before we add on that other blue triangle that was made from the 4 7/8" square. So that's just been cut off here. Make sure your right sides together, right? So, and I forgot to even point out, isn't that hash dot wonderful? So this is the Michael Miller hash dot fabric, and I'm using it with the jet black right now, so you can see the 3 colors coming together. So as I do this, my other trick in lining up my triangles is I'm looking at actually over here at this back tip first. Kind of like to line that up, and then I can line up this straight edge along here. To make life always a little bit easier, probably wise to drop the solid piece, the non-patchwork piece down. So if we have any seam issues, we can control them as they come through. We're going to make a 1/4 inch seam allowance right along that edge there. Now I'm going to come on back over to the ironing board, and I'm going to press into the solid piece versus the patchwork piece. So hold that up in the air. Last step will be come on over here, and let's just be safe and accurate and go ahead and take a moment and trim off these little corners. We need a total of 4 of those, and I will be right back with my 4th one made in a second and show you how to put the center of this block together. Okay, so like I said, we've got 4 of these units together. Let's just take a second and double check to make sure that everything turned out the same. So you can see, okay, good. I've got black, gold, blue. You can see the green down there dialed in. Now from this point on, we're gonna have our orange portions come in and kind of touch here in the middle like this. So I'm just gonna start with 1 here, and then I've kind of got my blue triangle facing on this outside edge. We're just basically going to build a pinwheel, if you will see it that way, with the orange portions of the block. So now the next thing I'm going to come in is I'm going to bring this blue one over here, black on the outside, blue one over here, black on the outside. See how it's working? And then here. So we should have this wonderful pinwheel of the orange and the black and the green, just like that. And now it's going to be super simple. We're just going to go ahead and assemble 2 squares at a time. So I'm going to pull them over here and make sure I'm sewing the center seam together. And because we're just doing this like this 1 block next to the machine, you can really chain piece at this point. So I'm going to grab this other center seam allowance, set it together here. And chain piecing, if you don't know that term, just means we're going to do lots and lots of the same sewing together over and over again, kind of in a chain or sausage factory format here. And we're going to just get that cut off, trim that out like that. Now we'll come on over to the ironing board, and we're going to just press. You know what? Let's press into the larger piece of fabric. Let's press into this blue piece. That'll help our seams just settle down a bit. Okay, so we'll do the same thing for this one. And now as we bring these back together, let's make sure that our orientation is truly that pinwheel still, like we wanted with those oranges in the center, right? We don't want to make that diamond, although that looks pretty dang cool too. I wonder if that's coming down the road. Okay, so here we are with this, and I'm just going to go ahead and match this up, fold it over, and I'm going to really pay attention to this center seam, and the reason we press both of those seams in the same direction is so now they're going opposite directions. We call that nesting. It's really a great feature to help keep all your patchwork accurate and smooth and flat. So as I come in over here now, I'm approaching that area. I'm making sure that those seams line up. Take a second and adjust to the corners now that I've secured that. Now that's super easy, wasn't it? Let's just go ahead and take a moment and press. You're just going to go towards one side. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason you could really do in here. But now here is our awesome center block. That's all we needed to do. Like I said, it was a super simple construction for the center this time because every piece was exactly the same in the orientation. Again, go back and watch the last video. I really messed it up. So all of the borders on the project, as you can see over here on the design wall, all of the borders that go around the rest of the squares are gonna be the same, but we're gonna need a couple of new pieces and a couple of new units. So basically what we're doing here is we're gonna make 4 of these little pieces. We call this a flying geese, or a rectangle with 2 triangles sewn into it. So we need 4 of these total, but 2 of them are gonna get our cornerstone blocks put on the outside as well. So let's make one of these all the way together so that you know what we're doing, and we'll put those all on. So starting out, we're gonna use of our jet black. I just love this black. At any rate, so it's an 8.5 by 4.5 rectangle right now. All of our squares, whether they're black or they're this wonderful marble fabric from Michael Miller, those are gonna be 4.5-inch squares. So of the blue squares, we're gonna need to basically turn these into half square triangles eventually. Maybe you can see I've drawn a line on here. If not, the easiest way to do it, I just take a ruler again, lay it from corner to corner, and then I like a fine tip Sharpie marker because this is going to be a seam or an edge guide. I don't want a big thick line because I want to keep this really accurate. So I just use the fine tip Sharpie marker there, stitch that together, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take that drawn line and I'm going to lay this square onto the rectangle so it fills in technically almost half of it. So as we come in here to the machine, now that black line is going to be our stitch line. So I'm going to lower my presser foot, real accurate, and I'm just going to stay nice and slow on that stitch line. Kind of actually watching out in front of the presser foot more than anything. And with these rectangles or with these flying geese blocks, it's really imperative that you sew one on first. Now what we're going to do is we're going to trim off the excess. So make sure you know which side is the fall off, the waste or the excess, however you want to hear that. So it's the corner. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a ruler to keep our hands safe, cut off a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but you will be making tons and tons of these to make this whole project. And I've got a little plan up my sleeve. Well, maybe, I don't know. At any rate, so please save these and just leave them together like that, right sides together, because you can just sew those right into half square triangles later for another project because they're large enough to do so with. So I've trimmed off that corner. Now as I come over to the ironing surface, I am going to go ahead and press, even though it's the lighter of the 2 fabrics, I'm going to press into the triangle away from the rectangle to make the next seam go on even easier, okay? So from there, I'm going to come in, and this is the part that I need you to really pay attention to. I just want you to make sure, again, right sides together, and then this line is going to come up here. You can already see the triangle that's forming, just like you can see in the finished unit. So now that that's done that way, we're going to come on back over. We're going to start on the other bottom corner. Remember that sewing line, that drawn line is for stitching on. Sometimes it's an edge guide, sometimes it's a sewing guide, depending on how you're making your half square triangle. So I have to point that out. Again, trim before you press. Set aside for later. Let's press these open. Excuse me, press them over to the blue. Open would mean to have the seams go in both directions. I'm just pressing to one direction there. And now that that's made like that, I'm going to take these other 2 squares and I'm just going to sew them right onto the edges out here, making the long sides of the borders for these center pieces. And now because of the work I'm doing, I can actually just do the next seam at the machine and we'll iron both at the same time. And now we're just going to put on that other square. So officially we will have 2 of these, like I said, long units like this, and then we'll have 2 of the short units. Now for these long units, I want you to press from the rectangle into the square. This will help with bulk management in a few moments. So from the rectangle out into the square, the cornerstones, I now have 2 of these. and I have 2 of the small pieces. So let's build out the rest of our design. Again, this is completely symmetrical, so it doesn't matter where it goes. We're going to make sure that the triangles, though, come into, so the points come into the blocks like that. So make sure you have your orientations correct and put on both of the short sides first. So I'm just going to flop this over. Okay, and now for these ones, I want us to actually press into the block because of the way we set up the cornerstones on the other one. So now I'm actually ironing from the add-on border piece into the center. Same on this side over here. So iron, holding up the work, press that over that way. Now those seam allowances are pointing towards the middle of the block, and the other seam allowances are pointing away from the block. So that's, like I said, nesting, and that's really awesome. So we want this here, grab this like this, stitch that on, and now we have even more seam allowances to match up, which will help us with our accuracy down the road, if that is of a concern to you. For me, I only care because I'm making a bunch of these and I want them to be awesome when they're done. But I will tell you, a little bit of inaccuracy, still keep you plenty warm. It'll quilt up just fine. Just work at your own personal level of perfection and know that with every project you make, you are improving both in your sewing capacity and your color sense and all of it. You're trimming, you're cutting, you're pressing. I know, I've been sewing almost 20 years and I still get better and better most of the time. All right, and there it is, just like I promised, super simple and easy. We've got all 4 of the borders on now. Let me just press this so you can get a great look at it. Alrighty folks, there it is, block number 5 from Peek into Batik, the wonderful quilt and sew along from Michael Miller Fabrics. Like I said, we've been doing it with our wonderful batiks over and over and over again. This is the whole big project. I know you love it, right? But like I said earlier, these blocks are super fun and super easy, so you could technically make quilts after quilts just by making the blocks, or I know many of you will be joining me all the way through all 12 months to making all of these super fun blocks. I'm having a blast. I know you are. We will see you real soon with another great tutorial right here at Making It Fun. I'm glad to see you're still there. Hey, if you insist on spending all day on YouTube, great with me. Please check out a few of my other videos. I think they're fantastic. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to be notified. We'll see you next time for another helping of fun.